Hello team, welcome to another ATP Geopolitics video with myself, Jonathan M.S. Pearce. This is Ukraine War News Update, first part thereof for the 26th of January 2026. We are going to be talking in this hits and losses video about a number of different things, some drone strikes, close range drone strikes, FPVs and whatnot, a new mine contraption, Steve Witkoff's going to come up, energy crisis again, so on and so forth. Not too much, actually, compared to other days and weeks that we've had previously. I think the Ukrainians and Russians both seem to have, the Ukrainians more so, I think, not been sending so many missiles and drones into Russian airspace, which is a little bit of a concern. So I do wonder about whether Ukrainian military-industrial complex sites have been hit, but we'll talk about that in a second. In the meantime, please remember to like, subscribe, and share. It keeps you in the loop and helps out with the channel. So thank you to those who have already done so. Okay, let's get into the details. Ukrainian general staff figures for the Russian losses for the day before. All the usual caveats apply. You can find them linked in the description below. We have a pretty high number of vehicles and fuel tanks, 147, a single piece of special equipment there. And that correlates with over 1,000 personnel being lost, 1,020 to be exact. 3 tanks and 1 armored combat vehicle, very low in those categories, but that's not untypical. 32 artillery systems, that's fairly typically high, and 2 multiple launch rocket systems are usually high. 917 tactical drones being used. That'll be a mixture of FPV. I don't know if it definitely includes FPVs, but certainly one-way attack drones, loitering munitions like the smaller Lancets compared to, say, the Shaheds, obviously all the Grand Shaheds, or Gerbers, all that kind of stuff. So yeah, you're going to have Lancets, you're going to have all the reconnaissance drones, your Zalas, Supercams, Orlan 10s, Orlan 30s, etc., and possibly if FPVs are included in that, I mean, that's just surely an endless number. But anyway, that is a typically fairly high number there. Okay, moving on. So fairly good day for the Ukrainians. There's a video here, interesting video. One might think that it's taking the Ukrainians it's taking an incredibly long time to clear out the Russians from Kupiansk, in that town in northern Kyiv, on the northern part of the northeastern front line. It is evidently very labor-intensive work. It's quite an interesting bit of footage here of them going into these different buildings. You know, you've got basements, you've got rooms. It is dangerous because they're going to be quite easy to defend against the incoming soldiers. Difficult to hit with aviation. Not only do you not have that much aviation support in terms of guided glide bombs, but those bombs are going to be used for high value targets, and clearing out a couple of individuals from a basement in a building is probably not high value enough to use that. So you have to clear them out, I think, mano a mano, and that is going to come with a lot of risks, and you want to do it slowly and effectively, and do it in a way that doesn't lose you lots of your own soldiers. Here we have a video of them going room to room, capturing a couple of Russian soldiers, and also taking out a couple as well. So interesting bit of footage, but it kind of goes to this idea that I've been talking about, that it is understandable that they are taking a long time to clear out the remnants of the Russian forces in Kupiansk. Of course, the Russians officially, according to the MOD, still control Kupiansk. So, there you go. 2026 it is. No Armata has been spotted at the front. So the T-14 Armata, the new Russian tank that has not materialized at all. But there is this instead, says Special Kherson Cat. Wow. So a Russian suicidal frontal assault using a stripped down Ural truck, roof and doors completely removed, loaded with infantry and sent straight toward the front line. So there is that. The Frontline update from Scruffy Tales of Warzone, I advise you go and subscribe to his channel. He's quite bullish at the moment, quite upbeat about Ukraine's numbers. They are numbers that come from Syrsky, of course, but the idea, as I've reported to you previously, is that the Ukrainians are claiming that they've reduced their casualties by 13%, while at the same time are taking more Russian casualties than they have previously. 35,000 a month killed is the claim, 13% reduction in their own casualties. And altogether, that is the right direction in both senses for the Ukrainians there. And it could be a case that the Ukrainians are, there are some claims. There was a rumor I read from one source that was a translated Russian claim or statement that the Ukrainians are advancing in a number of different places. I'll give you more updates on this later, but it's not good news type thing, which is okay, pinch of salt and all that, but it is, and I keep promising a frontline update, but I'm so busy at the moment. It is, I think, a period where we've had Syrsky give those stats and then say 2026 we are going to attack, because you can't forever sit in defense, which is absolutely correct. But of course, attacking is incredibly resource expensive, both in terms of material and of course personnel, which is such a valuable asset for either side. But it's going to be interesting to see what happens, or whether the Ukrainians just do a kind of subtle active defense and just push back in key places, keep the Russians at bay. I don't know that they've got enough resources to warrant a massive sort of counter-offensive 2023 style. I don't think they have that ability anymore. But it's going to be interesting to see what happens over the coming weeks and months. Okay, moving on. We've got another video here. This is drone units continue destruction of enemy ATVs on the approaches to the front line. 80% of logistics are built on these machines, is the claim from Max 25. Now, this might be useful in the context of Rhino Leary's thread the other day that was seen as pretty controversial, claiming that Ukrainians are not spending enough time attacking in depth and taking out logistics, are too focused on pleasing people online by having individual soldiers be taken out by FPV drones. Of course, Magyar and Robert Brovdy from the Unmanned Systems Forces was pretty robust in his defense of that claim, of that criticism, saying that actually 1/3, 30% is their aim for taking out personnel, and actually they want to be looking at 70% material, logistics, so on and so forth. He says that actually at the moment we're near a 40% in terms of personnel, but still, it's not like they're ignoring the logistics areas. And this is a case of, this is logistics. This is getting troops from A to B, and oftentimes on ATVs we see supplies being carried. Same with motorbikes. Actually, we've seen all sorts of appendages to these machines to carry different stuff. Now, talking of taking out individuals, this is just some incredible footage here. This, I think, again speaks to, I say again because I'm constantly showing you footage that illustrates the flying skills of these Ukrainians. This is going into a tunnel that is half full of water, and it still manages to fly without taking out the rotor blades on the top of the tunnel. It still managed to fly the length of the tunnel and take out the Russian at the end of it, who's lying in water. Just the conditions these guys have to put up with. But again, so these are the consistent videos that we see of individual Russian soldiers getting taken out. I'm going to pause it now. You get the idea. Just huge numbers of these people getting taken out. So this is definitely a thing that keeps happening. Now, the idea that you need to kind of not concentrate on this, but concentrate on logistics and controlling territory in depth is great. But if you don't do this, then these people will advance onto your positions that are very sparsely populated with defensive soldiers. So you need to be doing both, right? Which is why Robert Brovdy says, well, the answer is we just need more drone pilots, which is why he has been recruiting to the tune of 15,000 extra people to join the USF, because they, at 2.2% of the armed forces, are responsible for 30% of the hits, casualties, the material being destroyed. So it is really important that they get what they need. Ukraine's 46th Brigade reported a successful strike on a tank storage site, along with numerous other enemy target. So we'll just have a little look at this video. You can go and watch these all at your leisure. They are linked in the description below. And if I ever have too many links to put into the description, because there's a character maximum in the description to YouTube videos, I will post them down in the first comment, a pinned comment in the comments thread. But yeah, lots of individual soldiers here getting taken out, as we are used to seeing. ATVs, there's a good example of an ATV with a trailer there, so used for logistics. That is getting taken out. Obviously, the drone was approaching and the soldiers did a runner, which is not unusual. Just trying to find this. We have a tank. There's some dugouts there. Not sure what we have in terms of tank storage. I think that's just this. Maybe it's just the translation went a bit awry for no reports, and it was a tank, a turtle tank. But anyway, there we have, one of many videos coming out. Now, I showed you this video the other day of a Russian or set of Russian strikes on a Mi-8 and a Mi-24 helicopter. That one looks close enough to worry that it pretty much would have hit, although it does look like a zoomed in image. So if you super zoom it in, this drone is probably still very far away, and it cuts out and this one as well cuts out at quite a fair distance away from the helicopter. So it cuts out there, right? And both, if you're going to be as hokey-cokey as possible, then you're thinking electronic warfare has done its job, and the drone is going to cut out here. What does that look like in terms of the drone actually hitting exactly what it wants to hit? I don't know. You can imagine a situation where these drones miss the helicopters, but in all probability, at least some damage was done to these helicopters. Now, this is an issue. Obviously, the Russians are able to get these sorts of drones into key areas and strike these bits of equipment. Russia, says War Translated, appears to have used Starlink-connected Shaheds for the first time, striking helicopters near Koprivnitsky yesterday. Defense Ministry, or a couple of days ago, advisor Serhiy Bekrestinov, I thought that's Stenenko, says the drones flew extremely low to evade radar using manual guidance there. So that is, yes, definitely a worry. They will need to make sure that they are doing something to mitigate against that threat. And one thing you can do to mitigate that threat is strike at drone launching sites, so the sort of places that these drones are launched from, so they never get up in the air in the first place. Well, it turns out that Ukrinform reports that Ukraine's unmanned systems forces hit 60 Russian drone sites, launch sites, over the past day. That is an incredibly large number of sites. So units of the unmanned systems forces, because they have that dashboard where you can find out exactly what they have achieved. They've struck 60 launch sites for Russian drones over the past days, and most of these are likely to be FPV drones, much closer to the front line. According to Ukrinform, the unmanned systems forces said in a post on Telegram, over the past day, units of the Unmanned Systems Forces Group hit or destroyed 1,100 enemy targets. Among the hits were 341 enemy personnel, including 152 killed, 60 drone launch sites points, 12 artillery systems, 2 tanks, 29 vehicles, 10 motorcycles, and 160 enemy drones of the copter and fixed wing types, which is, significant. I would like to know how many of those drone sites were like deeper back behind a contact line and more likely to be these sort of fixed wing drones, Lancets, Molniers, drones that can be used to strike at things like those helicopters. Now, I referenced this earlier, pretty fascinating this, and actually maybe this has been invented before, but this is pretty clever, but something that I would have thought would have been invented previously, because actually it makes a damn lot of sense, this. Okay, what have Ukrainian soldiers done? They are joining 2 TM62 and anti-tank mines. So these two, typically, the round, almost 10-kilogram mines, pretty decent explosive charge there. And they're connecting these two together on a length of square steel tube to create a wide barrier. Pressure from the vehicle on the tube will initiate one or both of the pressure activated fuses. Either way, both landmines will detonate. Now, why this is so clever, because of course, if you lay these mines, if you just miss that, if you drive over this mine with that mine going between the axles of your vehicle, then you're not going to, if it's a pressure fused mine, triggered mine, you're not going to detonate the mine, right? If it's a magnetic fuse or whatever, it's going to be slightly different. But these bog standard mines, you're not going to detonate them unless you properly drive over them, and you can just miss these with your wheels or tracks, and you don't do any damage. It doesn't do any damage. It doesn't detonate. Of course, if you're lying this across, and these are going to be easier to see on the road, but if you put these into grassy areas, slightly overgrown grassy areas, since no one's plowing these fields these days, then it's going to be much easier for a vehicle to drive over this and detonate both mines. You've just got more. I mean, this whole bar is the mine, right? So suddenly you've got a mine that, instead of being like, I don't know, 30 centimeters across or whatever that is now like 2.5 meters or whatever that is. And that means you're going to have far greater chance of having something explode on it. So I think that's a pretty clever little thing. The Germans use this technique. Oh, so there you go. So it has been previously invented in World War II with the Telemann 35s, and likely the Soviets used a version of well, but it's not something that we've seen since or in this war. So it surprises me that's the first time I've seen this be developed. But good on the Ukrainians. Of course, what the Ukrainians can do, the Russians can do just as easily, especially when it's not some kind of whizzy technological thing that requires, I don't know, some kind of funky chips that they need to work out. This is just a piece of metal connecting to mines. And the Russians should be able to do that too. The thing is, of course, the Ukrainians are not using their vehicles in the same sorts of places and in the same sorts of ways as the Russians. The Russians are the ones generally attacking, and therefore the ones generally using their vehicles much closer to the contact line. A Russian Z blogger known as Fighter Bomber wrote that the Russian army continues to drop bombs on the Russian city of Belgorod, so on their own city, urging local residents to understand the situation and, quote, hope for the best. Apparently, he sees nothing wrong with the situation. Anton Gerashenko translates his Telegram posts as follows: they demand answers for all the FAB bombs that continue to periodically fall on Belgorod and the surrounding areas and everywhere along the line of contact. I'll start with the conclusion right away. When will this stop? When the line of contact is pushed more than 200 kilometers away from Belgorod, or when the special military operation ends, because UMPK kits and UPABs, so these guided glide bombs, like any mechanism, tend to malfunction from time to time. I cannot say why the individual bombs fall within the city limits, possibly because the target that this FAB is supposed to strike can only be approached on such a combat course. As a result, the bomb's flight path passes over the city because UMPKs and UMPBs fly in straight lines, not zigzags. Possibly someone didn't give a damn and plotted a combat course directly over the city because it'll do. And it did, except one bomb failed to deploy. Possibly everything was calculated correctly, and the bomb simply deviated from its trajectory due to a malfunction and flew wherever it wanted. Possibly the bomb's wings didn't deploy or broke off, and it simply carried on into a populated area. The fact that almost all of these bombs land without detonating strongly suggests that the bomb and the UMPK separated abnormally, triggering safety systems that prevented an explosion. But that, of course, does nothing to stop the bomb from falling. Not a single one of these incidents was intentional. These are all munition failures. The failures are primarily caused by the emphasis on the quantity of UMPKs being produced. Quality naturally suffers as a result. Secondly, by haste, which unfortunately is unavoidable in the training of crews, aircraft maintenance, and munition preparation. What can be done? Hope for the best. Well, there you go. Just hope for the best. Now, I think there's some interesting little nuggets in here, such as these bombs not exploding because of safety mechanisms. I doubt they've got safety mechanisms. It's not something, it would be too costly for them to put in place. Like the decent things like Storm Shadow missiles, like really expensive missiles, they have these fail safes that if they aren't going to hit their target, they then veer off and go and land in a pre-designated safety point, like a field somewhere, just so you don't have collateral damage to civilians, since you're going to be striking near civilians usually, right? These FABs and KBs, they're not going to have this safety mechanism. So the idea that they're not exploding when they hit is likely that they just are duds that don't explode frequently. And I do wonder what the dud rate is for these bombs. I have heard previously that, you know, they weren't particularly accurate. Their accuracy has been improved. There's no doubt about that. We've seen a number of these hit like on a pinpoint now. You know, like I showed you that long building the other day or the other week where I think 3 or 4 of these hit. Bong, but you know, bosh, 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 and that shows that, you know, at least in that case, the accuracy is pretty on point. So they, by all accounts, have improved the accuracy. I don't know for what the dud rate is though, but I would like to. Okay. Ukraine reports, as we move on to standoff munitions, distance munitions here, Ukraine reports that air defense downed or jammed 110 drones overnight. That's out of 138 that were fired into Ukraine. So that's 28 getting through. Now, remember, if you have 28, 27, 28 drones getting through, 30 drones getting through every day would be 900 drones in a month. Imagine 990 kilogram drones impacting somewhere, 900 of them. So just each of these days are cumulatively really bloody difficult for Ukraine, even on a normal day, like a Scarecrow's normal day of like, yeah, it's not a huge day of drones. It's not like 300, 400, 500. Yeah, it's 28 of them, 28 of these drones going off inside Ukraine. And you think, well, yeah, okay, Ukraine's a big place. There's only one here, one there, one over there, a couple over there. It's not too much of a problem. Yeah, it is when you are having that every single day for every single week, for every single month, for all year. That's 900 in a month. And then the next month, another 900 more. And then the next month, another 900 more. And you're adding missiles to that, and you know, this is why I do worry for some of these critical targets that probably have been hit and are repeatedly hit, like military industrial complex facilities. I'm going to be talking with Richard Woodruff later, and when I say later, in about 18 minutes, so I better get hurried up with this. And we're going to be talking about strikes on facilities and energy infrastructure and whatnot. Last mention of the Korean analog of the Iskander ballistic missile, KN-23, dates back to December the 13th, 2025, which is 43 days ago, from the Ukrainian armed forces. It can be assumed that Korea has halted the supply of these ballistic missiles to Russia. That's interesting. At the same time, the Russian armed forces have most likely replaced them with their own S-300, S-400 surface-to-air missiles used in a ground attack mode. As of January the 5th, these missiles have been used increasingly often in missile attacks. Now, Russian attacks result in outages for 80% of Ukraine, while 15% of residential buildings in Kyiv remain without heat. That is still a massive problem. 16 ballistic missiles hitting the thermal power plant in Kyiv on January the 13th was the precursor to this. That was the real big night of like energy issues for Kyiv particularly. So when the problems began in the capital, says Alexander Karchenko, director of the Energy Research Center. Reminds me, actually, I haven't got that in this video, an MP yesterday died for the Servant of the People Party. His quad hit a minibus, complete accident. But unfortunately, yeah, an MP died yesterday. That just reminded me of that. The situation in Kyiv remains very complicated. About 800,000 people have no electricity in their homes as of last night, said Anton Gerashenko. Those luckier to have electricity only see it for several hours a day, and often no electricity means no heating and water. In the Desnyansky district, a very densely populated residential area, there is no heating. A lot of residents had less than 30 minutes of electricity in the past 2 days. Large tents are installed in the district so people can spend nights in relative warmth and have some hot food. However, for many elderly people, leaving their apartments is virtually impossible without an elevator. Social services do their best to deliver hot food to them once a day. The long and harsh Ukrainian winter continues. Russia is already planning new attacks on the Ukrainian energy infrastructure. So simple things like this that we kind of maybe overlook is that old people getting down from the 12th floor of an apartment block is unlikely to happen. You know, they're not walking down 12 sets of stairs and then walking up again. What happens with them with no energy, no heat, no water, you know, in minus 12 degrees centigrade temperatures? G7 plus countries will soon transfer over 6,000 units of large energy equipment to Ukraine for urgent repairs, says Syridenko, the prime minister. They will make additional contributions to the energy support fund. And moving on to actual strikes, don't have too much at the moment. It's a bit early. So sometimes the reason why my videos are sometimes later than they used to be is because, you know, I have to wait really till post 11 o'clock UK time for there to be more information about the strikes that took place the night before. But anyway, there were 2 separate attacks on Zaporizhia city and more in the region. School was damaged along with many cars and windows, but no injuries have been reported overnight. But there were obviously 28 drones hitting in various places. A refinery, going to what Ukraine achieved, a refinery is currently burning apparently in Russia's city of Slavyansk on Kuban. According to local residents, a series of powerful explosions were heard in the city, 5 to 7 of them. Apparently a barrel of the refinery, I don't know what a barrel is, whether it's one of those big just storage tanks or something else, is on fire. According to the operational headquarters of Krasnodar Krai, drone debris fell on the territory of 2 enterprises, which led to fires. In addition, drone debris was also recorded in the Seversky and Abinsk districts, or they could just be hits. We don't rightly know. Now, a drone strike hit an electrical substation in Russian-occupied Luhansk on the morning of, on this morning. The target was preliminarily identified as a 220 kilovolts Kirovska substation. Shows one of the incoming drones before impact, followed by heavy smoke rising over the city. Now, here is a drone. I don't see too many Ukrainian drones these days, but here is, as in, footage like this. See this very, very frequently. Now, that looks to me like an FP1 drone, which has, that's not landing gear. That's probably the launch. There's sometimes this tube thing that comes off the back where they launch it into the air. This is not a runway launched drone like the Lyuty drone, which looks similar, has that kind of upside down V tail at the back, but the Lyuty, I think, maybe slightly larger fuselage and has a landing gear. Anyway, that Kirovskaya substation here appears to be what's on fire, is smoking pretty darkly there. So some damage done there. Now, Cyber Boroshno and a bunch of other open source sources have been throwing out a whole bunch of satellite images over the last day. I've only picked this one, but there are a whole bunch showing different damages done in strikes that were in the last month or even maybe longer. I can't remember. But sometimes it takes time for these satellites to pass over exactly where you need them in order to do some battle damage assessment. And so the assessment can come weeks and weeks and weeks after the initial strikes. This is actually only from a couple of days ago. This is just one I picked out. This is Penza, but there was satellite imagery of the Energia military industrial facility in Russia and a couple of others, looking at the roofs being blown up and this and that and whatever. Satellite images of the aftermath of the strike on the oil depot in Penza, published by Radio Liberty journalist Mark Krutov. One of the tanks was completely destroyed and several nearby ones apparently damaged by the fire that took 2 days to burn out. It's interesting that when you have these big fires that take a couple of days to burn out, you think, oh, that's hopefully lots of tanks being taken out. Potentially here, just one tank burning for a couple of days. And it makes you realize that these depots really do need multiple hits, quite a lot of hits to do the damage that you want them, do the damage that you want done. Now, Telegram channels Exile Nova and Cyber Boroshno have released, as I mentioned, pictures showing the results of Flamingo missile attack. So here's one of them, actually. This is another one. So Flamingo missile attack damage being reported on the Su-34, Su-35, Su-57 production contractor in Belgorod. So relatively close to Ukraine. 4 out of 4 hits. That's obviously going to hopefully impede the production of some of their later planes here. Regarding hostile propaganda, the opponent claims that only one of the 4 missiles reached the factory, but satellite images suggest otherwise. Likely all 4 missiles reached the target area with a deviation radius of about 80 meters. The largest area of destruction, 25 meters, does not correspond to the version of one hit. This seems to be an attempt to downplay the consequences. Important clarification, the strike was not on the Belgorod milling plant, but on the LLC Skiff M, a high-tech manufacturer of special tools for processing titanium, aluminium composites. CFRP titanium, critical for Russian aviation production. Up to 70% of their products are tailored for aerospace materials. The chain, MiG and Sukhoi, Su-34, 5, 57. Despite the war, the company continued to import over $7.6 million per year, including from Germany, and brought in high-precision machines and centers. For example, Stahli and Hermes pieces of equipment. The damage occurred in the main production area, and given the nature of the damage, recovery, if possible, will be long and difficult, is the claim with some associated satellite images. Sorry, just rushing through here because I do have to interview Richard Woodruff. The air defense forces found a mole who was directing Russian strikes on airfields. Sadly, this happens all too bleeding often. So yeah, this particular mole was taken by SPU, the military counterintelligence officers of SPU, 21-year-old serviceman of one of the air defense units in Mykolaiv region, who was an enemy informant. So an air defense unit probably tasked with defending these airfields is then giving away information. And I always wonder what the motivation is, whether it's just money, whether there's ideology involved, or both, or what, you know, so frustrating. EU Council has finally approved a phased ban on Russian gas imports. Imports of Russian pipeline gas and LNG to the EU will be banned. The ban will take effect 6 weeks after the regulation enters into force. Existing contracts will have a transition period. The full ban will come into effect for LNG imports from the beginning of 2027 and for pipeline gas imports from the fall of 2027. Before allowing gas imports to the EU, the bloc states will check the country where the gas was produced. Good news there. Now, in Zhukovsky, near Moscow, about 5,000 Russians are without heating or hot water for the second day. This is Moscow. Outside, the temperature is down to minus 30 degrees. Indoors, the temperature drops to minus 13 degrees due to frost and burst pipes. Floods have begun in some houses. Now, this is more to do with maintenance and any kind of attention from the Ukrainians, but this is obviously, you know, I think a sign of how difficult life is in Russia and how under-resourced many neighborhoods are due to the war. Now, Steve Witkoff, this just sucks completely. I'm not going to play you the audio, but the legend, I can recognize your voice now better than any voice on the earth, says Steve Witkoff to Putin's interpreter. You legend, yay! Now, I don't think this is a case of getting this person on board to try and manipulate them. The interpreter, that's their job. They'll be an FSB interpreter. So the one being manipulated here is Witkoff. If he's calling the people that he's dealing with, that he's trying to, well, one would hope he's trying to negotiate with to the benefit of Ukraine. Of course, he doesn't give a shit about Ukraine. He's just negotiating with people that he really likes. And he's giving away Ukraine. He's never once visited Kyiv, and this is like the 942nd time he's been to Moscow, and he's talking with his legends. Hey, all right, mate. Hey, it's really sickening. Serbia's President Vucic says Ukraine joining the EU from January the 1st, 2027 is part of a peace plan to end the war. He said the plan would bind not only Ukraine and Russia, but much of the international community, and that EU rules would be changed despite opposition from several member states. Something to look out for there. I don't know whether he's just sounding off because Serbia aren't going to be getting into the EU sooner than Ukraine, but I don't know that he's really tried particularly hard to achieve that. Right. Last thing I'm going to say is the Russian forces are withdrawing from Kamishli airport in Syria. So that's good news. They're withdrawing their influence from abroad there. Look, thank you very much for watching. I really appreciate your support. Take care, and I'll speak to you soon. Toodle pips.